Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Now, the monthly series I do here on YouTube, looking at recent disappearances. Been doing this for about 6 years. Started this way back in the COVID times. Today, I'm looking at the disappearance of Chang Cho, a 62-year-old man. He went missing on March 27th, 2026 from LA, from Los Angeles, California, coincidentally from a part of Southern California that I know fairly well, right there on Ventura Boulevard, the address being 16025 Ventura Boulevard. We're going to take a look at his disappearance. But you should know there isn't a lot on his disappearance, but he still is missing. I'm doing this recording on July 1st, but I'm going to use his disappearance and publicizing it, analyzing it, to look at the bigger, more general idea of what are the issues of trying to figure out how people who have mental and physical handicaps. And it seems that these types of people should be found fairly easily, but it's amazing how many of them disappear and are never found. Why is that? How can that happen? As you are listening to this today, I hope you will give this a thumbs up. This, video, I'm going to put pictures to it. And for YouTube, so give this video a thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please do so, and please consider supporting Unfound through a variety of ways: Patreon, PayPal, right here on YouTube by hitting the join button below. And if you need help with a disappearance, go to missingpersonsconsulting.com. So all we have on Chang's disappearance, and if he is Chinese, I think he's an American citizen, I think. And I think in what Chinese culture, first name, last name are switched around. But Chang Cho, and that is how he is listed on NamUs. This is all we have on his disappearance. I couldn't see anything on Facebook, any family members asking for help. Anything. This is all we have, and being that it's so new, it's not on the Charlie Project. His disappearance is only on NamUs, and here is the paragraph for his disappearance. Chang Cho was last seen on March 27th, 2026 at approximately 8:30 p.m. at his senior assisted living facility located on Ventura Boulevard in Encino, California. Chang's room, the entire building, and the immediate area of Ventura Boulevard were canvassed and were met with negative results. The missing individual is at risk, and he may be disoriented and or delusional. His speech may be slurred, or he may be nonverbal. That's all there is on the entire internet on Chang's disappearance. I don't know why he was suffering from these issues. I don't know why he was in the senior assisted living facility. Remember, only 62 years old, and my insight is that there probably aren't too many 62-year-olds who are in assisted living. I think when we think about that, maybe we get maybe people into their late 70s, 80s. Of course, my father's 89. He still lives by himself in his home in Pennsylvania. So being 62, I think, and being in an assisted living facility is rare. But I don't know why it was there. I mean, reading the missing person is at risk. He may be disoriented or delusional. Do you have mental health issues at some point? Did he have a severe head injury? There's a lot of, did he have a stroke at some time? Many, many, many different reasons that he could have these afflictions as they are described here on NamUs. Is that important to analyze this? Probably not overtly so. Maybe might help us a little bit, but I don't think it would help us a lot unless we were to find out that he had a habit of doing this, of maybe taking off, being found, and brought back. Certainly, that would affect my analysis of his disappearance, but there is no information on that at all. So this is all we have. Not a lot. We have a paragraph. Now, my additional insight, going to the more general idea of people who are mentally challenged, physically challenged, maybe a combination of both, living in an assisted facility, whether the person's 90 or 70 or 62, maybe if we wouldn't even want to go much younger than that, is as a person who reads disappearance news every day simply by Googling it, or given that I'm a member of so many groups on Facebook, there are disappearance flyers in front of my face every day. I would not say that Chang's disappearance is unusual. I think there are a lot of people, we have a lot of people like this, especially in the United States. A lot of people do not want to be in those facilities, even though they should be. They maybe feel like it's a prison or something. They feel like they've been put there maybe illegally, even though probably the proper channels were taken. They want to go back home. We know this, it's very sad. It's very sad. And so myself, as a 55-year-old with, I still have my physical and mental capabilities, it's hard for me to put myself in their shoes, except to say a lot of us might get to that point. It's unfortunately, and who knows how we're going to feel about that. Some people don't mind it at all. They like having people like them around them. Other people want more privacy, and maybe some people, if they're suffering from a mental disease like dementia, they may not even really understand what is going on. But for Chang, we just really have no insight into any of this. So, as I've stated, there's no history of him, no family posting about him, nothing. And I remind you, I'm recording this on July 1st. He went missing in late March, so we have April, May, June. So this disappearance is over 3 months old, and he is still listed on NamUs, so I'm taking for granted he is still missing. So how can this be? We have a 62-year-old man with these problems. He goes missing in a very, very busy downtown urban area of the United States. Why has he not been found? It doesn't sound like he would be able to provide for himself. He should maybe, let's say, stick out like a sore thumb, maybe because of his problems. How can this be? I'm going to do my best to try to explain this and analyze this. Let's start here. We've had many disappearances like this on Unfound. I'm just going to name a few. And even one recently here on Unfound Now, local to me here in Pinellas County in Florida. We had Betty Tupfer. Remember, she went missing after a bus ride into Riverside, California. Robert Wayne Cox, he went missing from his backyard. I realized that his sister, who was the guest, believes that there was foul play possibly involved. I don't know if there's any proof of that, but he allegedly walked away into the backyard of his home, into the woods, even though he was suffering from some physical and mental ailments. William Charles Jones Sr., he was at a kind of assisted facility. Remember, an officer there in Ohio was the guest who we talked about his disappearance. But it's noteworthy in William Charles Jones Sr.'s disappearance that there was a river nearby, and I think that's still a very viable theory that he might have done that, whether on purpose or by accident, and died. We had Renee Lamanna suffering from mental health issues, was not in an assisted living facility, but her sister was trying to take care of her, took her to her house there in Ocean City, New Jersey. Renee ran out the front door. The sister and a guy who was there tried to chase after her. They went out into the street. Renee was gone. And then, as I stated much more recently, and here on Unfound Now, not a regular Friday episode, but on one of these like I'm doing today, we had Petro Kuko, who was a guy suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, and he was staying with his family, and he seemingly maybe walked away from an apartment complex, and you might remember me talking about how I actually drove over there and looked around. So we have featured people who either were suffering from some mental disabilities, physical disabilities, living in assisted living facilities, have certainly done that over the past 10 years. And those people, of course, all those people I just mentioned, they're all still missing. And some of these disappearances, I mean, Renee Lamanna goes back to the 1990s. Even though she was a younger woman, for what we're talking about today, I'm not sure age matters that much. So what is going on here? How can it be that these people, physical, mental conditions that you would think would make them very easy to find, cannot be found by law enforcement, cannot be found by searchers, cannot be found, if you want to get into, we're not getting into that today, but dogs and drones and putting flyers up, everything else. How is it that these people can't be found? I'm going to first say what I reject. These are, you can see these ideas come up in Reddit, come up in web sleuths, come up in YouTube comments when disappearances such as these are covered, and even probably going back to some of the Unfound Nows that I've posted. People have commented, maybe even, for example, with Petro Kuko, did he get picked up by somebody? I think that's still a very popular idea here in Pinellas County where it happened, and he's been missing for like 6 months. But what I reject that they got picked up. I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm certainly could be open to the idea that once in a while when some of these people do stray away, run away from an assisted facility, or they're living at home and being cared for and they manage to walk out the front door, as many people do this, the odds just say that yes, somebody who has ill intentions will happen to come along and see an opportunity. Certainly. But there are no facts to support that this is common. As I have said many times, I don't know why so many people default to ideas that don't have a very good likelihood of happening. There's just no proof, no factual information to believe that this happens a lot. But given that I think I know the world, especially my own country, I'm open to the idea that it does happen once in a while. Somebody with ill intentions. And this could be by friends or strangers. What are we supposed to believe? Family picked these people up and hid them? That sounds like a lot of work. Strangers, like I said, I'm open to the idea that it happens once in a while, but overall, who really has time for that? What are these people just evil? I guess some of them could be. It just seems unlikely. And it just, as much as people have tried to find these people, and a lot of these people do end up being found, but how many of them are found after they got picked up by some stranger? Probably hardly any. In addition, if some of them are found and they're deceased, how many times is it proven that they were picked up by some stranger and murdered? Not very common. Not very often. And as far as like Ubers and taxis, you'd think that there would be paperwork, or not paperwork, but information on some app that these people got picked up. And how would these people have paid for their rides? You know, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, taxi drivers, whoever else, they like to get paid. So what are we talking about with this? This whole idea that a lot of these people get picked up, who are like this, that get picked up and whisked away, it comes across to me very much like the smiley face killer theory, or what I call hoax, from 15 years ago, 18 years ago. It's a theory looking for facts, my opinion. So I reject the idea that a large portion of these people are getting picked up. They're going out into the road and somebody just happens to buy and says, oh, hey, want a ride? Most likely does not happen. What I also reject is the idea that there's some sort of cover-up, that there was an accident inside one of these facilities and management somehow needed to cover it up for whatever reason. I'm not saying, once again, I'm not saying it's never happened. But given how many of these disappearances occurred, to think that cover-ups are a part of even a sliver, a noticeable, visible sliver on a pie chart, it just, my experience seems very unlikely. There are no facts to support that this is common. So I reject that they're getting picked up. I reject, notably, that there's a cover-up, even though I realize both of those make for great discussion for bored people on the internet. Me, I'm trying to get things right, and I don't care if my ideas and theories and insight is interesting or not to any of you. My goal is to be correct, if you've ever wondered. But it still stands. These people are missing. What are the mistakes that are being made, as best as I can tell? Would say number one, we underestimate these people's abilities to get away, or to want to get away. I think that is a big part of this. I think for the rest of us who are healthy, have our minds, have our bodies, that we see these people shuffling around inside one of these facilities, or maybe they have their physical abilities, their muscles and tendons and ligaments and everything work, and it's all connected to the brain, but their mind is kind of gone. We ourselves, the rest of us, are the healthy people. We start to get a particular idea about what these people can and cannot do. And I think that we are fooling ourselves. I think that when we look at these people and then look at ourselves, is, well, they don't have the abilities that we do. And for the most part, we are right. But there's a lot to be said for people when they get motivated to do something, whether they don't want to do something, they don't want to be somewhere, they want to be somewhere else. If they feel they've been wronged, my kids put me in this facility and I don't want to be here, things like that. Even if that's not what happened. It very well may be at the time that this person agreed to be in the facility, but now it's some years later, maybe they've lost their memory, and they start telling themselves, oh, my kids put me here against my will. Those types of people are going to be very, very motivated to get out. Of course, against their health, against probably their safety, but they still want to leave. So we underestimate these people's abilities to get away. Just because they've been boxed in doesn't mean they are physically unable to go places and to walk places. And in fact, I have to admit, I'm even inclined to believe that maybe sometimes these people kind of sandbag their abilities, if only for the reasons that when they do that, they get more attention. By acting like they can't walk as far anymore, they get assistance. They get a little attention. They get a little love. Oh, poor you. And in that way, we as humans, it's like training people. It's no different than us training a dog to sit and roll over. Well, people that do this, they're actually training their caregivers to act in certain ways. This is the way I see it. So I think that's part of it. Because we get into this mode of, this is an 80-year-old, or in this day, a 60-year-old with these mental disabilities for whatever reason, that person couldn't have gone far. When really, Chang maybe was capable of a lot more than anybody realized, even maybe the people who knew him best. That's part of it. Another part of it, as best as I can tell, and this has been a topic that goes to all sorts of disappearances, not just for people who are physically and mentally handicapped, but the people looking for these people are thinking too rationally and logically. Why do they do that? Why do people get into this mode of thinking rationally and logically when it's clear that the people who went missing, at least some of them, had no ability to think rationally and logically? I'm specifically talking about people with Alzheimer's dementia. Can't remember what they did 10 minutes ago. Cannot put a long-term plan together. Can't feed themselves. They need daily care. If they turn on the stove, they forget to turn it off. If they put something in the microwave, they forgot they put it in there. And then we turn around when these people disappear, and law enforcement and everybody else thinking, well, where would they go? If I was that person, where would I go? Well, they surely wouldn't go here. They surely wouldn't go there. And you start ruling places out because you forget that these people may not have the ability to put together two thoughts, from step A to step B to step C. But here we are doing step A to step B to step C. I think this is also part of this. As soon as people looking for these types of people, as soon as they start thinking, he or she wouldn't do that, he or she couldn't do that, that's when the mistakes start. Now, I realize the alternative, when you start thinking about all possibilities, so you're saying all possibilities, well, all factual possibilities, but the only way you can have factual possibilities is if you know the histories of these types of disappearances, which most people do not. I do, because this is my work. This is why I can talk intelligently about it and try to then explain it to all of you. And I realize a lot of you, I'm continuing to learn a lot. I think all of you are continuing to learn a lot. But I think that when people who get involved in, for example, searching for Chang, they think, well, he surely couldn't have done that. Well, he wouldn't have done that. When they do that, all they're showing is that they really don't know anything about these disappearances. In fact, they don't know anything about disappearances at all. Instead, what should be done is you need to be looking at percentages. But it's no different than going to Vegas. Well, the reason you go to Vegas and most people lose, all those places were not built on winners, is because the casinos understand math, science. They understand the science of it, the statistics of particular numbers coming up on roulette, of course, with black And red in roulette, I guess it's 50-50, right? Although is there that one green square, so that maybe throws things off a little bit, a couple percentage points. But you know what I mean. You have to look at this from a percentage point of view, but you can only do that if you know disappearances and be able to start to put disappearances and likelihoods and categories and everything. Most people can't do that. And so that they try to plan their searches and their thinking in other ways, and it goes to logic, and logic is not a good teacher for this. As I was just telling somebody today online, it doesn't have to be logical. All it has to do is be factual. And too many people confuse logical and factual. Those two words are not even synonyms. They're not. You know, factual and true are mostly synonyms. Although facts, and of course we start talking about truth, that gets into maybe a little philosophy, and there is no truth and all that. Facts a little bit different. Numbers, dates, things like that. But a lot of times they are interchangeable. Logical and factual are not interchangeable. And so one more point is we also have to realize that accidents happen to people who escape or walk off too, including prisoners. So I'm kind of open to the idea that in some of these disappearances, very well maybe these people get away and there's some sort of accident somewhere. They're intending to go somewhere, but instead they fall into a river. They're not really suicidal, but they don't know what they're doing, and they fall into a river, never to be seen again. That's just one example. I'm going to guess that that's happened a few times over the years. We shouldn't just think, well, because they escaped or left or whatever was in their minds. Once again, we can't get inside their minds. We can't automatically think, well, they're out there somewhere alive. It very well may be that they're dead, and if they're dead, it doesn't mean that they were murdered or they planned to commit suicide. It very well could be it was some sort of accident that occurred. And I haven't even touched upon, even for when people who have their physical and mental abilities go missing, how many times searchers fail. Drones, dogs, ATVs, night vision, heat vision, whatever they call it, all of it fails. Even when we're looking for healthy individuals who even left suicide notes behind, that they said they were going into the woods to commit suicide, and still they're missed. And then later, years later, some hunter comes along, doesn't even know the suicide occurred, and boom, there's remains. So you have to factor that into this type of disappearance as well. Now, as for what happened to Chang Cho, I'm guessing, and all I have is that paragraph, I'm guessing that Chang Cho was probably, even if he had some mental issues, that's what I deduce from it, probably physically he was probably very able. And wherever they were searching, probably because they were trying to go on logic and common sense, we might call it, that limits what they might be thinking about what Chang Cho can actually do. And so my guess is that Chang Cho most likely is well out of the search area. Is he still alive 3 months later? Hard to tell. You know, this would be what, April, May, June? Yeah, over 3 months later, hard to tell. But for all of you, when you hear about these types of disappearances, don't automatically think that people got picked up, there's cover-up. I think these people have a lot more abilities than they are given from the public and from law enforcement, even their own families who knew them. I think they tend to be underestimated. And when you underestimate people, that means searchers aren't going to go as far, and you're going to start ruling out certain choices. And that's how all people, end up being missing for a lot longer than was needed. It's the best I got for this. Like I said, we've featured some disappearances like this on Unfound. The issue is that a lot of these do end up being more in rural areas where there are woods. Of course, those searches are going to be a lot more difficult. Even going back, like I said, with William Charles Jones Sr., there's a river nearby. That really complicates things. Betty Tupfer riding a bus. Did she really know what she was doing? Hard to say. But she was certainly physically capable. But did she really know what she was doing? There are many mountains and forests around Riverside, California. Robert Wayne Cox maybe underestimated him. Like I said, his sister thinks there could be foul play. Renee Lamont is certainly physically able, but I realize that her family thought that she might have gotten picked up by somebody. I think that anybody would have tried to pick her up. I don't think she would have. She was paranoid. I don't think she would have gotten in a car with anybody. And she certainly wouldn't have been abducted where it all happened. And with Petro Cucco, as I've already stated, I think he's still in an area right close to his apartment complex, but there are some little bushes and these kind of, even in Pinellas County, even though it's very urban, there's still some areas that could be very difficult to search due to bushes and woods and trees and thorns and everything else, and I can't rule out that is where Petro went. Even though you may say, well, he's an old guy, what's he going to do? Probably didn't totally understand what he was doing. So that is Chang Cho. Of course, you know anything about Chang Cho's disappearance, please go to LAPD. And if Chang Cho's family, if he has any family, no matter where they may be, if they want to contact me to talk about this further, they can email me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. That completes this episode of Unfound Now. We'll do this all again next month.